Nowadays, people faking aspects of their lives to chase clout on the internet has become something almost normal. From influencers staging fake drama for views to TikTokers inventing entire identities to go viral, every day there's someone new being exposed for living a lie. But DissociaDID didn't just fake a lifestyle or drama. She took things to a shocking extreme by allegedly manipulating Dissociative Identity Disorder, or DID for internet fame. DID is a severe mental condition in which a person develops multiple distinct identities due to childhood trauma. Yet DissociaDID turned this painful disorder into a spectacle, leveraging it to build a following of millions. And while there's a huge question mark hanging over whether she eventually has DID, believe me, that's far from the worst thing we're about to uncover in this video.
My name is Nina.
Hi YouTube, my name is Jake.
Hello.
My name is Gregory.
My name is Nadia. It's nice to meet you.
A little small. Just a little small.
Do you want to take a quick moment?
Sorry, what?
Do you want to take a quick moment off stage?
No, I'm here now, sorry.
Because DissociaDID didn't stop at glamorizing or potentially faking DID, she blatantly stole deeply traumatic abuse stories from real victims, directly copying their most personal and horrifying experiences from private support groups and passing them off as her own. But even that sickening betrayal isn't the darkest part. What if I told you DissociaDID directly lifted alter identities and traumatic memories from an obscure conspiracy-filled book on Illuminati mind control, a book advocating that DID is artificially created through horrific abuse to produce covert slaves? Yeah, it's twisted as it sounds. And it's exactly what she did. So buckle up, because this rabbit hole is deeper and darker than you can possibly imagine. But before anything, let's see who she is and how she ended up with this much scandal. Despite having a staggering 1.1 million subscribers on YouTube and similarly impressive numbers across her other social media platforms, DissociaDID has actually shared very little information about her early life, making her past somewhat mysterious. But here's what we know. Chloe, which is DissociaDID's birth name and was the original host personality before any other alters appeared, was born, raised, and still lives in the UK. Before settling on a diagnosis of DID, she received multiple other diagnoses, including psychosis and borderline personality disorder, BPD. In her own words, she claimed her alters were present long before her diagnosis, but she dismissed these experiences as psychosis at first.
It was renamed DID in 1994, but we knew very little about it. Over the year that she saw us, before she ever mentioned DID, she considered psychosis. This was dismissed after a closer consideration.
If you're confused about why she's referring to herself in the third person here, that's because the person talking in this particular video isn't Chloe, it's her alter, Kaya. It might sound strange, but that's often how people with DID refer to their alters. But here's where the confusion and suspicion starts to creep in. Within just the first few minutes of this very same video, Dissocia openly admits she might change details about these stories in future retellings, or acknowledges she might have said contradictory things before.
We may in future remember more things as amnesia shifts, forget other things, or recover additional context, all of which could change the way we perceive what happened. This has happened to us in the past, and it is very normal for DID with splitting, fusion, amnesia, denial, integration, and having multiple different parts, different alters, identities, all holding different parts of the puzzle that is our history. Things shift as we heal. Memories are given, forgotten, hidden, and exchanged. This is a journey, and as of right now, this is what I can tell you.
To be fair, memory gaps and inconsistencies can be a genuine characteristic of DID. Someone with the disorder might recall an event differently at different times, but in Chloe's case, these constant contradictions make it extremely difficult to trust anything she says.
So when was it first suggested to us, or when did we first start to click that we might have DID? From December 2015 to mid-2016, we saw a therapist, and we'll call her L. That's not her real name, we've just picked a random name. We saw her for therapy alongside receiving extra psychiatric support from a separate clinic. That clinic is where we were diagnosed with BPD, medicated, and had DBT group therapy. That was all covered by insurance, and it was separate to our therapy with L. Elle was the first professional we'd seen to realise that we had dissociative identity disorder. And upon her mentioning it to us, it was the first time Chloe had ever heard that. We'd heard of multiple personality disorder before, which is what DID used to be called. It was renamed DID in 1994. But we knew very little about it. Over the year that she saw us, before she ever mentioned DID, she considered psychosis. This was dismissed after a closer consideration of our symptoms.
According to her own account, Chloe's mental health took a significant nosedive after her DID diagnosis, made worse by the stress of university exams. Things got so severe that doctors contacted her university, recommending she take a break. She returned to her parents' home, where she began researching DID extensively. But this is also around the time she joined Facebook groups dedicated to DID support. But these groups weren't just safe spaces for discussion. Sadly, they also became sources from which she allegedly began stealing personal trauma stories. Here's the issue. DID is typically understood as a trauma response from severe childhood experiences, and DissociaDID certainly has shared multiple traumatic stories of her own. However, the validity of these stories has become highly questionable, especially given her extreme claims of experiencing satanic ritual abuse, SRA, multiple times without her parents' knowledge. In one Facebook post, Dissocia shared a deeply disturbing drawing, allegedly created by one of her little ones, an age-regressed altar depicting herself as a child being taken from her home by strangers into a cave where horrific abuse occurred. But here's the kicker. Despite making such dramatic and graphic claims, another screenshot emerged clearly showing Chloe admitting that not only had she never experienced SRA, she didn't even know what the term meant at the time she posted the drawing. This blatant contradiction cast massive doubt on her story, but that's not all. Observers quickly pointed out that her disturbing drawings closely resemble those of Kim Noble, a renowned artist with DID whose art vividly depicts genuine childhood abuse. Dissocia's art doesn't look just similar, it feels directly copied, throwing yet another huge red flag on her authenticity. But perhaps the most telling contradictions come from her own words about her family. DissociaDID repeatedly implied her parents were abusive, even directly confirming on Ask.fm that she'd been spanked bare bum at just 7 years old. With such explicit claims, you'd naturally assume her parents either knew or somehow facilitated the horrifying SRA she described, right? Yet Dissocia directly contradicts herself in a later video with Team Pinata, her then partner, now ex, painting her parents in a far kinder, supportive light.
The reason why my parents, especially my mother, wants to know what happened and will ask me like every time I go to therapy, do you know what happened yet? Do you know what caused this yet? Is because both my parents love me so much and they want to know what on earth happened. Like, what happened? What did they do wrong? You know, what did they miss? Was there something they could have done to avoid it? You know, stuff like that. And it's difficult to see them kind of suffering, holding that alongside me, because I don't know either, and that's scary, and it's obviously scary for them too.
Yeah.
But like something, my dad struggled to swallow it more than my mum did, the coming to terms with DID. And one thing I remember him saying really vividly, that he said a few times actually, that he said, well, this makes sense now and it didn't before, was apparently me saying something, and it was regarding suicide.
So Dissocia is clearly contradicting herself, but not as much as her diagnosis stories. And this is where things get even messier. DissociaDID has repeatedly said she was diagnosed at the Pottergate Centre in the UK by a psychotherapist named Remy Aquaran. On the surface, that might sound legit, an official-sounding clinic and a respected-sounding man. But once you dig even a little deep, the entire foundation starts to crumble. First of all, under UK healthcare regulations, a psychotherapist can't legally diagnose someone with DID. It has to come through a psychiatrist, often under the NHS, and after very rigorous evaluation. But the Pottergate Centre, it doesn't diagnose people, it offers an assessment, which is basically a series of questionnaires, like the DES, Dissociative Experiences Scale, to evaluate if someone might have a dissociative disorder. It's not an official diagnosis, it's more like a suggestion, a very expensive suggestion. And here's where it gets sketchier. Remy Aquaran, the man behind the Pottergate Centre, isn't just a psychotherapist, he's also a known supporter of conspiracy-laced narratives like Illuminati mind control and satanic ritual abuse, SRA. The Pottergate Centre has direct connections with a UK nonprofit called First Person Plural, EP, which has been criticized for promoting outdated and unscientific beliefs around SRA and cult mind control, topics that the broader psychiatric community has long debunked as moral panic-era fiction. In other words, the place DissociaDID went to for her diagnosis has a reputation for fueling delusions, not healing them. And what's worse, Reports have come out suggesting that the Powdergate Center has a habit of handing out dissociative diagnosis to anyone who can pay. Multiple sources have stated that 90% of their assessments result in a dissociation diagnosis, and a stunning 60% of clients are told they have DID, which is astronomical when you compare that to actual prevalence rates. In the UK, only about 1.5% of the entire population is estimated to have DID, and that's a generous estimate. So either Powdergate is sitting on the mother lode of undiagnosed cases, or they're handing out diagnosis like candy at Halloween. Even respected mental health professionals have spoken out against the center. One psychologist went so far as to publish an article condemning Powdergate, saying that their assessments do more harm than good, planting false ideas in vulnerable people's minds and sending them down the rabbit hole of imaginary disorders and repressed false memories. Now back to DissociaDID. She once shared her DES score publicly, an 86.7, which is exceptionally high. For context, even people with legitimate DID usually score somewhere between 30 and 60.
30 indicates significant dissociative symptoms, and further investigation to include a dissociative disorder is called for. So we started with that. My score was well over 30. It was 86.87. This was further analysed using the D.
Her number was nearly off the charts. While that doesn't prove she's faking, experts agree that a score that high often indicates malingering, or to put it plainly, faking symptoms. And it's not just about the score. DissociaDID herself has admitted in a video from 2023 that she never actually got an NHS diagnosis, only the Powdergate assessment. That was her stance, until people started looking into Powdergate's shady reputation. Suddenly, she changed her story. Out of nowhere, she began claiming that she had been diagnosed through the NHS after all. But the timeline doesn't match. The change in her narrative came after public backlash, when people began posting about the unreliability of Powdergate and its connection to fringe conspiracies. Instead of addressing those concerns, she just started deleting comments, scrubbing doubts, and quietly slipping in this new version of events. And that's the problem. It's not just that her stories are inconsistent, it's that they change only when she's caught. When nobody's looking, she's more than happy to build her story on unreliable sources and shady clinics. But the moment people start connecting the dots, she rewrites her past like it's a rough draft, not a diagnosis. This isn't just terrible, but also disrespect to the people with DID. And talking of disrespect, there's even a much worse thing DissociaDID did, and that's bluntly stealing other people's trauma and talking about it on her videos like it's her own story. Many people on Reddit and other forums have come forward with some serious accusations against DissociaDID. Not just that she exaggerated or faked her symptoms, but that she straight up stole their trauma. I know that sounds extreme, but hear me out. According to these users, some of whom were part of private DID support groups, Chloe allegedly took stories they had shared, deeply personal, horrific abuse stories, and slowly integrated them into her own narrative. Not word for word, but close enough to be unmistakable. Then, like clockwork, a year or so later, she would drop a video acting like one of her alters had suddenly remembered going through the exact same thing. One person described the moment they realized what had happened, saying, "It's not just our inner world they basically copied, but traits of our alters suddenly became full alters of theirs. They also took certain aspects of our abuse and information we disclosed in a private group, and suddenly it became part of their inner world." They were smart in that they waited over a year to make the video, probably thinking people had forgotten. It's pretty hard to forget your own abuse, so seeing it in a video of theirs was soul-destroying. That's heavy. And even if you want to give her the benefit of the doubt, even if you think maybe people just misunderstood or maybe she just had a similar experience, what she did next kind of makes that impossible. Instead of responding, instead of defending herself or explaining anything, DissociaDID started deleting their comments. People who were saying, "Hey, that was my story," found their words vanished. And if they kept pushing, she blocked them across platforms. No acknowledgement, no conversation, just delete, block, and move on. And that says a lot. But it doesn't stop there. One of the most bizarre and honestly disturbing moments was when people started noticing her alter named Mara. This edgy, dark, prosecutorial character she introduced looked eerily familiar because it wasn't hers. Mara was originally created by Mallory Scheidel, an artist and TikTok creator who built the character as part of a fictional concept. But DissociaDID didn't credit her. didn't say it was inspired by someone else. She presented Mara as part of her inner world, as if this alter had just organically emerged from her system. And more than that, she gave Mara a role as a prosecutor, which in DID terms often means a tormentor, an internalized abuser. That felt calculated, like it was designed to maximize impact, to provoke, to stir up just enough dark intrigue to keep people watching.
I'm not supposed to be doing this. My name is Mara. I'm the first persecutor to be on the channel. Although technically I'm a persecutor protector. I'm rehabilitating. But Kaya's been preparing to film an update video that everybody's been asking about. That meant that they wanted to put on makeup today. And that appears to be a positive trigger. So I try to make myself look a little bit more like myself. There's nothing I could do about my hair. Kaya's standing right over my shoulder.
When a commenter called her out on it, she didn't deny it. She simply said, Mara is an introject. Pretty normal to happen with DID. Now look, yes, introjects are a real thing in DID. Alters based on fictional or real people do exist, but this wasn't just someone who watched a character and had a dream about them. This was a direct lift, a full character, story, look, and vibe taken from another creator who'd already built it and turned it into content. There is a difference between an involuntary mental process and marketing strategy, and this felt like the latter. It didn't stop there either. Someone asked her where she got the information that shaped her system, where she learned what DID was and how it worked, and among the sources she listed, she included The Haunted Self by Anno Vanderhart. That name might not ring alarm bells right away, but here's the thing. Anno Vanderhart is one of the most controversial figures in trauma therapy, not just for his theories, but because he was permanently banned from practicing therapy in the Netherlands after decades of documented ethical violations. We're talking boundary issues, inappropriate conduct with clients, the kind of stuff that gets you stripped of your license for life. So when DissociaDID says she formed parts of her system based on his work, even after knowing his history, it starts to feel less like research and more like justification, like she's cherry-picking anything that can support her narrative, regardless of whether it's reputable or even safe. And you start to notice a pattern here. Every time someone calls her out, every time a story cracks or someone pokes a hole in her timeline, she doesn't reflect, she doesn't clarify, she erases, deletes the comment, blocks the account, then rewrites the narrative slightly and keeps going like nothing happened. You can't say with 100% certainty that every story she told was false, but when your defense to stealing trauma stories is blocking survivors, when your explanation for copying a fictional character is it's normal, and when your inspiration comes from a disgraced therapist, it doesn't scream truth, it screams control. It screams manipulation. And I'm not here to say whether or not she has DID, that's not my place. But what I can say is this. There are people who live with this disorder every single day, quietly, privately, struggling to survive, not to go viral. So when someone like this turns it into a brand, and worse, uses other people's pain to fuel that brand, it's not just shady, it's cruel. And just when you think it couldn't possibly get more absurd, just when you're trying to make sense of the trauma theft, the character plagiarism, and the erasure of anyone who dares to speak up, it somehow gets worse. Because, turns out, some of her alter identities and traumatic backstories weren't just lifted from real survivors or creators online, they were pulled almost word for word from obscure conspiracy-heavy Illuminati books. Yeah, I wish I was joking.
Access to the dungeons, who has access to the carousel, who has access to the basement, and nobody has access beyond the carousel except me and one of our persecutors, Demon.
The book is called The Illuminati Formula Used to Create an Undetectable Total Mind Control Slave. And this isn't a book talking about some obscure conspiracy theory. It's a fever dream of a book filled with outrageous claims about the Illuminati and mind control, often wrapped up in trauma-based manipulation theories. It talks about how the Illuminati supposedly uses extreme trauma, frequently via satanic ritual abuse, SRA, to induce DID in people and turn them into mind-controlled puppets. These alters are created with specific roles, often involving espionage, sex work, or being manipulated into certain behaviors without the person ever realizing it. And guess what? DissociaDID took pages, and I mean pages, out of this book. No shame, no hesitation, and it's like she thought we wouldn't catch on. She shamelessly lifted alters and concepts directly from this bizarre narrative. Honestly, it feels like a slap in the face to anyone who actually struggles with DID, because she's exploiting trauma for clout, using some seriously dangerous and irresponsible ideas as inspiration. And she didn't stop at just using the names or basic concepts. She took the whole character setup almost word for word, like it was some kind of treasure map for her next viral alter persona. Let's start with Omega, because that's where things get particularly sketchy. In the book, Omega alters are designed to trigger suicidal tendencies in times of crisis, often used as a last resort or in the most extreme of missions. Guess who's got an alter named Omega? That's right, DissociaDID. This Omega isn't just a throwaway name though. It has the same exact traits from the book: suicidal programming, sexual fluidity, and being defined as a ghost, all copied.
Be the biggest wedding. Do you have any non-binary alters? One of our littles, and Omega is gender fluid. She's most often, she goes by she, but she does change genders sometimes. She also age slides, and she's a ghost, so she's very I don't know.
No creative flair, just a direct ripoff from a conspiracy theory-driven book that nobody should be taking seriously. But wait, it doesn't end there. Then we've got Glass, another alter in Dissocia's system. This one is described as a fairy with wings made out of glass. That's pretty whimsical, right? But hang on, the book also has a fairy that balances an hourglass on her wings. And guess what? The hourglass in the book is tied to the suicidal programming. It's almost like DissociaDID took that imagery and just ran with it. Her Omega and Glass alters even share a common space in her inner world, this forest setting. Oh, and get this, the book specifically states that the hourglass is connected to suicidal programming, and DissociaDID's alter Glass fits right into that mold. Now we're really diving into some deep waters with the next alter, Ruby. This one is a matriarch figure in Dissocia's system, controlling the trauma memories, and allegedly more powerful than the other alters. Guess what? The name Ruby isn't just a coincidence either. The book discusses how Ruby is a trigger word used to unlock specific alters with trauma-holding capabilities, exactly like DissociaDID's Ruby. There's even a red marble in the book, which refers to the part of the brain holding trauma memories. Ruby in the book is used to unlock that red marble, and guess what? DissociaDID's Ruby also holds trauma memories. It's basically a carbon copy.
Ruby, I'm in my 30s. Not really any of your business exactly how old I am. I know people are going to be like, Ruby's a dick, or Ruby's really, really rude. Honestly, I don't give a. You can say whatever you want about me. I'm like this for a reason, and frankly, I don't really care to change. I've done enough of that. So I used to be a persecutor. If you don't know what that is, educate yourself. Videos on the channel. Chloe will probably link one somewhere if you want to know what the hell that is. But it basically means that I was a bad alter. I used to harm the body, generally do not nice stuff. I never hurt anyone else. I never would hurt anyone else except in self-defense. I exist to keep the system physically safe. If somebody came to fight us or something, or we needed to physically defend ourselves because someone was like literally punching us or something like that, I'm the one who would front. I've got very high pain tolerance. I'm good at assessing I think I'm good at assessing danger.
But here's the real kicker. DissociaDID has openly talked about how she's glad she didn't experience SRA, this thing that she spent so much time talking about, making it seem like it's part of her trauma story. Funny thing though, she didn't even know what the term SRA meant until she started asking people in Facebook groups. Yeah, that's right. She was going around in private groups asking if anyone had experienced SRA, clearly fishing for details to add to her own narrative.
Media portrayal of this disorder, whether it's accurate or not, what was the first kind of image that you saw, that you guys saw?
Fight Club.
Fight Club, wow.
Mine was actually a documentary about a lady on YouTube, and I saw it, I must have been like 15, 16, and that was way before I knew about the idea. I wasn't diagnosed, or like it was suggested to me when I was, I think, 19. So when I saw that, I found it so interesting, and I was like, this is absolutely terrifying. I can't imagine living like that. Can you imagine having that kind of trauma? Because her trauma was like satanic cult abuse. And I remember watching it and thinking, Christ, like that's so interesting, but also, oh my God, I'm so glad nothing like that ever happened to me.
Now let's talk about the Granddad's Lounge situation. This is where it gets a bit more telling. There is a YouTube channel called Granddad's Lounge that exposed DissociaDID's blatant copying of this Illuminati book. And how did DissociaDID respond? She copyright struck the channel not once, not twice, but 3 times. 3 strikes. That's the exact amount needed to get banned temporarily. But guess what? She failed. The channel didn't get permanently shut down, but the video got removed. And here's the kicker. Why would she be so desperate to remove a video that was just exposing the truth? Why try so hard to silence someone calling out the fraud if the allegations weren't true? Makes you wonder, doesn't it? This whole situation reeks of manipulation and exploitation. It's not just about copying trauma stories or stealing characters from other creators. It's about actively using other people's pain and experiences to fuel her own personal brand, all while erasing and blocking anyone who calls out her contradictions or inconsistencies. What she's doing here isn't just careless, it's calculated. She's rewriting her past, cherry-picking whatever fits and erasing anything that doesn't. And for what? To turn it all into content. So clearly DissociaDID wasn't just borrowing questionable stories from conspiracy-heavy sources, she was actively profiting off them. But hold tight, because as sketchy as this all seems, DissociaDID's next chapter of controversy might even be more unsettling. Back in 2019, DissociaDID announced she was dating another DID YouTuber called Team Pinata. At first, it was just one of Dissocia's alters, Nin, dating Nan from Team Pinata, and the internet was eating it up. But soon enough, they both made things even more bizarre, claiming multiple alters from each of their systems had started dating. They didn't just announce this quietly either. They glamorized it, like it was some kind of DID fairy tale, romanticizing a disorder that's literally caused by childhood trauma.
I'm excited. Me too. Yeah. A little small. Just a little small. But we're gonna go in. We're gonna go in now. Everybody, we're friends. We're friends, everybody. Yeah. It's a good day. It's the best to say. I don't have any friends but Tommy, but now I have best friends. We're best friends now, and I take care of you now. But still be best friends. We both have big bodies.
This wasn't just reckless, it was genuinely dangerous. By glamorizing DID in such a public and sensational way, DissociaDID and Team Pinata were setting up vulnerable people, especially younger viewers, to think having DID was some kind of quirky personality trait rather than a debilitating mental illness. The more they played it up, the more incentive people had to fake symptoms, desperate for that same viral attention. But their weirdly celebrated romance took a darker turn very quickly. In 2020, shocking allegations against Team Pinata surfaced, and they weren't just troubling, they were flat out disturbing. Drawings created by Team Pinata were leaked, revealing deeply inappropriate sexual imagery involving minors. There's no nice way to put this. These drawings were clearly pedophilic. It wasn't just random either. Turns out Team Pinata was known within certain corners of the internet for having a sneeze fetish. Yeah, that's a real thing. He had openly participated in online communities dedicated to this fetish for years and sold disturbing artworks to his followers. Team Pinata didn't just privately harbor these fantasies, he actively marketed and profited off them. It was all right there, documented, posted openly online, and even sold directly to fans. The community that had once idolized DissociaDID and Team Pinata's relationship instantly turned against them. And as if things couldn't spiral any worse, just as this storm of backlash reached its peak, someone on Kiwi Farms maliciously leaked DissociaDID's parents' address, along with her personal and medical information, effectively doxing her. It was a genuinely messed up move that further complicated an already messy situation and understandably drove DissociaDID into a lengthy hiatus from social media.
Hey everybody, we're taking a break from our break to address what's going on with Team Pinata. when the images first started coming out, we wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt, and we did. But now that there's more information and more things that have been leaked that we absolutely can't endorse, it's not okay. We didn't know about any of this stuff, so obviously it's a shock, and we can't endorse or support it. It's not okay. And obviously we are very shocked and hurt and betrayed, and I don't know what's going to happen going forward, so please respect our privacy, and we're so sorry that we didn't know. Please stay safe, everybody. Bye.
When Dissocia finally returned, she made sure everyone knew she was distancing herself from Team Pinata. But here's where things once again get shady. Despite publicly breaking things off, she subtly continued showing affection towards him behind the scenes. She even went as far as encouraging other people not to abandon him and publicly advocated for Team Pinata to attend the entitled DID Life Conference. This was after multiple people and systems clearly expressed how uncomfortable and unsafe his presence would make them feel. In other words, DissociaDID was playing both sides, publicly denouncing Team Pinata for optics, but privately rallying support for him, regardless of his disgusting actions. Now look, I'm not here to judge whether DissociaDID is faking DID or not. To be honest, it's impossible to say without seeing official medical records from a recognized healthcare facility. But after everything we've covered, one thing is painfully clear. DissociaDID isn't just casually presenting DID, she's actively glamorizing it. Watching her content, you'd think DID was a trendy aesthetic, something cool to try out or collect, rather than an incredibly serious mental health disorder rooted deeply in trauma. Think about it. Her constant obsession with portraying each alter as these quirky, full-fledged people with detailed fashion sense, unique catchphrases, and trendy aesthetics doesn't just blur the lines between serious mental illness and playful personality quirks, it outright obliterates them. It's almost as if DID is just an edgy cosplay for her, a twisted fantasy played out publicly, designed to capture attention and rake in views at the expense of actual sufferers. And you know what the worst part is? It's working. Her glamorized portrayal has made DID seem almost appealing to countless impressionable viewers, instead of seeking help young people start romanticizing their own symptoms, or even worse, faking them. I've seen comment after comment from kids genuinely believing they have DID because they feel different or simply want the same dramatic intrigue Dissocia displays. She turned a severe, complex disorder into an aesthetic identity you can adopt, rather than a painful condition you must manage and heal from. Not only is this deeply irresponsible, it's downright dangerous. By fetishizing her alters, treating them as some quirky band of characters, she trivializes the immense emotional pain, the confusion, and the genuine danger actual DID sufferers face. This casual and cutesy depiction also leads directly into widespread misinformation. Dissocia consistently presents distorted ideas, outright falsehoods, and unreliable narratives about DID as if they're fact. Her misinformation isn't just misled, it's actively harmful to a community already struggling to be understood and taken seriously. Like, it's one thing to battle privately with a disorder you didn't ask for. It's entirely another to capitalize shamelessly on it, glamorize it for attention, fetishize it for content, and actively push misinformation. What DissociaDID is doing isn't advocacy, it's exploitation, plain and simple, and it's something we absolutely shouldn't tolerate. In the end, it's clear, DissociaDID hasn't just made mistakes, she's systematically turned trauma and mental health into clickbait entertainment. She's turned suffering into a brand, an aesthetic of fantasy, one she continually profits from. And in doing so, she's not just disrespecting every single person genuinely struggling with DID, she's hurting them too. So if after everything we've covered, if you're left feeling disturbed, confused, and genuinely angry, trust me, you're not alone. Because what DissociaDID is doing isn't just wrong, it's unforgivably terrible.